Hey truckers, we're back on the 61 again today. The last thing we did was cleaning rivets off the frame, getting the cross member ready to go in. So this is part 2 of it, that we'll get that cross member notch to fit inside this frame rail, because the back of the frame under the cab is 6 inches like the C60 and the front is 4 inches like the C30. So a friend and I were talking, and with that frame rail being the same as the C60 on the back and that cross member sitting on the lower part of the frame rail that drops down, everything should fall into line. So what we're going to do is we're going to build this front cross member to set into this frame, set the front clip on it, and build the body to that front mount. So let's get started. Here, help has arrived. So we look at these two cross members here. The one that's closest to us is out of the C50, and the one that's a little higher is out of the 66 C30. So we need to match this height onto this new cross member that we're going to use. And mainly the new one is going to be used because it drops down for a lower clearance for the core support. So with this in mind, what we talked about doing is taking a section off of this, lowering this part here down that actually sits inside the frame rail, box it up close, and we'll adjust the angle on the top of it. But ultimately all this will be tucked inside the frame rail and bolted in. All right, so let's get some marks on this and start grinding away. All right, we got the cross member left and right cut down to fit within the frame rail, and now we'll start working on getting some measurement to get this notch here. So drop this outside down, that'll fit within the frame rail. Did fit beforehand. This is what we're working with when we get this out. Let me catch you up to speed here. It's in my Marvin the Martian calculations. So I've got some measurements here on the inside of the frame rail, left to right. I've got the measurement from the top to bottom inside the frame rail, and transferred that over to the C60, which is a larger one. And what I've come up with is that this here is 4 3/4 height between the frame rails on the inner side, which we need to make that do the exact same thing. And this is the overall height that this needs to be. So this right here will actually drop down to this line here, and then we'll notch it back as deep as it will fit inside the frame rail from left to right. Cut out this template here, how I feel like it should work on the metal, and then we'll transfer it over, do a dry fit, and from there we'll start building it into place. Alright, so there's our cross member, and there's our measurements. Let's draw more pictures. Let's start out with a little visual of what we've cut out so far. So as you see, it's going to slide in, twist around. Everything looks good from left to right. I've got a little space there for it to clear the frame rails. So standing up, that's where we need to trim next. We need to trim this down so it fits in those frame rails and how much to trim off left to right on each side. Make a mark here as a fallback plan to know that that's where I need it to be, and that's how much I need to take off of that other cross member to lower it down. That looks like our measurement there on each side, so I'm going to go ahead and mark this as the outside of the lower frame rail. We finished our Marvin the Martian calculations, and so far I'm confused. But Google said I needed this number here, is that we've got 2 notches this size we need to take out of each corner here, lowering this upper side down enough to fit inside the frame rail. Comparing between the C60 or 50 and also the C30 from inside the frame rail width as well as the height. And what we come out with is just notching this corner here, and we'll check it on the truck to make sure it fits how we want it, and then we'll come back and start transferring that to the actual cross member. So let's walk with me. All right, let's slide this template in. And one thing we have to keep in mind on the actual cross member, it has mating flanges on each corner of it. So with that, we'll make sure that we can clear the rails. But as of right now, I think we're in good shape. There's our center mark coming over, sets on the bottom inside the rail, notched on the top. And we'll fix that flange on the top with a transition. Okay, we've got the marks transferred over onto the cross member, and what we'll be looking at is cutting this section off the top of it, taking this spacer out and lowering this top section down to this bottom line here, which will cause this cross member to fit within the frame rail, keeping everything else stock as it is. Got the cross member dry fitted in. I've got a vice grip to the top of the frame rail. A little bit larger of a gap than I wanted, but I had to get it to twist inside the frame rail. So I won't be able to weld it right now because I spent so much time with the calculations. And what we'll do is we'll pick up next time, getting this all put in place and glued in. And now that it's actually in, what I'm thinking I'll do is cut this line out a little farther here, cut a wedge out of it, drop this down to actually flow into that corner piece there. That way it all looks somewhat as a clean transition. Once we get this cross member modified, we can set the core support in and go from there. Thanks for the follow along in this transition from the C50 to the C30.